All right, we are back. It's a Monday as we enter the month of July for our horse racing coverage at this point of the week. That's the early part, which we haven't done for a couple of weeks with Chad Summers. Chad was on our show with John Hardoon on Thursday night, handicapping a couple of Breeders' Cup Challenge Series races, which we're going to recap and talk about on the show today. We're also going to recap some of the races at Royal Ascot that took place a couple of weeks ago. We've got a Hissa update. And but first of all, let me introduce Chad to the show because Chad, congratulations to you and John. You guys kicked ass on your picks on Thursday.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, gave out the exacta in all four races, both the free ones and the Patreon ones, and it sounds like from the look of things on Twitter and YouTube and the emails sent that some people made a lot of money.
Yes, matter of fact,
they made $5. They made their $5 for the next 50 years.
Yeah, and that $5, of course, is for our Patreon page because we did have two of the four races we made available for free. But then the other two races you had to pay, and that's normally the case. We don't provide a whole lot of free handicapping. Sometimes we do, but most of the time it's at patreon.com/PrimeSN. You pay a minimum of $5. Now you can go to $10 if you want to be a part of the picks, but if you, meaning the races, and you have an opportunity to decide which races that we handicap. But for just $5 a month, you get all of the picks that John is going to handicap. Chad comes on the show. Matter of fact, Chad's going to be on the handicapping show a lot more between now and the Breeders' Cup. We've already gone through the schedule. So Chad's going to definitely be on that show at least 3 or 4 times, including, of course, back-to-back bonanza Breeders' Cup shows that we're going to have. So that's just an awesome deal. $5 a month, patreon.com/PrimeSN. Michael Allen Kos, I believe Kos, C-O-S-C, how you pronounce that. He's one of our patrons. And Michael said, thank you for the nice try in Belmont, 9th race. A nice $428.50 payout on a 50-cent box. What do you say to Michael, Chad?
I say you're welcome.
There you go. And who would have thought that the week would have ended this way, the way it began, when JW wanted to know why you put the phone looking at your nostrils? Prop the phone up on a box or something and put it at eye level, Chad. I mean, what are you doing, man? Not every message on the channel is going to be pro. So
I think people have to understand I'm not exactly in a studio. A lot of times when we do still at the barn.
Yes.
And I like to do it in my office, but last week when we were doing the show, there was a party in my office, so I wouldn't be able to hear you. So I was in the tack room, making the best of the bad situation and still giving out winners. So it's okay.
That's right. That's all that I could. We could count the nose hairs as long as you give us the winners. That's all we care about.
There you go.
Okay. I tell you what. First, though, let's talk about Hissa because we didn't have the time with all the races that we handicapped on Thursday when the news broke out. So this gives us, a few more days to find out a lot more about the feedback. And I know there's a lot going on. So first of all, what is Hissa?
So for people that don't know, Hissa is the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act. It was kind of weaseled, for lack of a better term, into a COVID relief bill that was signed by President Trump his last year in office. And it's like a 287,000 page document. And there's so many different things that are put on there that were in and out and everything else. And this one had nothing to do with COVID relief or anything like that, but it somehow managed in. And basically, the long and short of Hissa is that the federal government is now, for lack of a better terminology, a corporate watchdog of horse racing. And so it's now, everything is monitored on a federal level. Right now is the safety initiatives, which is protocols as far as handicapping is concerned. There's now a nationwide crop rule where you can only hit the horse 6 times, and that's it. So that's rule is very different from before. In Kentucky, for example, there was a 6 overhand strike rule, but then you can encourage as many times as you want from the 3/8 pole to the wire underhand. At this point now, it's 6 and you're done. And so as a fan, as a handicapper, you might be watching your horse and you're imploring the jock to continue on, and he can't strike the horse anymore. If he does, he'll be assessed a fine and a penalty, and if he does it more than 3 times, he'll be disqualified, placed last, and immediately suspended. So there's a lot to the crop rule right now. The shoe rule is going to change next month, and starting next January, there's going to be nationwide drug testing done by the same labs that do the NFL testing along the way. So it's interesting. It's unique. There's a lot of things that need to change, and the biggest problem with it right now is the fact that there's just not enough horsemen and women that are involved in the day to day of this program, and they have a lot of outside people. And what that does is some of the rules seem a bit antiquated. They don't seem with the times, and there's things that make no sense. Like right now, they're trying to pass a rule that you can't have any ice on any body part of the horse 48 hours before a race. Now, if you've played a sport or been involved in any sport, I mean, you got guys in the locker room that are icing at halftime, let alone anything else. Live in an ice tub. So certain things
What's
like
that
that.
rule for? Why are they against that?
That's the problem. Is right now they make these rules and they won't exactly explain to us as to why they make the rules. They say it's for equine safety, but things like a MagnaWave, which is an electric blanket, laser therapy, therapeutic practices that are non-invasive. They're not going to affect the outcome of the race like that. Again, these are things that athletes get done on a day-to-day, especially as technology has grown. In horse racing, they're trying to outlaw it. The horseshoe rule, you can't have any other shoes other than your main shoes. And that's going to be a big problem, because as I equate that to in football, you see guys switch their cleats at halftime. If they see how the track is playing and everything else,
Yes.
you'll see them put on different cleats, different spikes for their safety and their protection. And with horses, every track they run on is different, and so to take away those shoes from them, that's going to kill their traction, that's not going to allow them to push off behind, is going to lead to a lot of injuries on their hind end, not being able to push off properly. And these are all things that need to be addressed and need to be changed. And unfortunately, right now, they're not really listening. It's our way or the highway policy, and so hopefully things will get better along the way. Now, as far as the safety is concerned, the initiatives. Look, when they stand behind this concept that they're about, making the game safe and fair for equine athletes and their jockeys and the horses and everything else. Well, if that's the case, then this could be a good thing, but it needs to be done the right way. And we'll see how that plays out. They're going to have a situation right now. There's a rumor circulating right now. And again, this is just a rumor. It's not confirmed. But there was a situation in Indiana today where somebody might have been caught trying to give something. This would be the first case that would take place under the Hissa jurisdiction. Again, this is federal. If you're caught trying to change a parimutuel event, it's a federal crime. And it's going to be interesting to see, A, if this is indeed something that happened, and B, how this will be addressed by Hissa rather than in the past by a state regulatory board, which may or may not choose to affect the penalty. This is what Hissa supposedly was set up on. And if that's the case, step up. Let's see what you're made of. And so, this is going to be very, very interesting to see how this is adjudicated over the next, 72 hours, if it is indeed true and it does come out. But it seems like my sources are pretty strong on this.
Okay, so do you believe, before we even get anywhere, because again, it's only a few days old, so before anything takes place, would you say that right now you think the sport is better off going in this direction?
No. Well, the problem is we failed to police ourselves for years.
Sure.
There are things that are done all the time. You hear handicappers gripe about it all the time. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what's going on. And those things need to be addressed. So if that addresses it, then I'm all for it. But
you're not confident about that.
No, because I feel like it needs to be addressed in a kind of collaborative effort with people that
know what they're doing,
know what's going on the ins and outs. And if they're not involved in the situations, that's what happens. And a perfect example for you and for the fans out there. So Lisa Lazarus, who this isn't a shot against her. She became the president and CEO of the Hissa in February. So she's kind of trying to get acclimated as best as she can. The rules were starting in July 1st. Fine. On the safety committee, they had a jockey. Okay, they didn't have any trainers, but they had a jockey. They had vets. They had some safety people. No trainers, no or anything like that. John Velasquez, Hall of Famer. Almost everybody that listens to the show will know John Velasquez. He was on the panel when they came up with the crop rule. He vehemently disagreed with this rule of the only the six uses. They don't care really about safety. They say they do, but they don't. He got fined $500 the other day in Kentucky. He was completely against it. There was then a Zoom call and a town hall in Kentucky maybe 3 weeks ago featuring Lisa Lazarus, who's the president and CEO. She said to the Jockey Guild, this rule will be fine in Kentucky. It's the same rule that you already had. The Jockey Guild stood up and said, it's not the same rule we had. Lisa said, well, John Velasquez was on the panel and he agreed to it. And Lisa said, and then the Jockey Guild said, he most certainly did not agree to it. And we can get him on the phone right now if you want. And then they quickly changed the subject. And then the Jockey Guild joined some of the horsemen associations in suing Hissa and taking them to court. And so there's a lot of disagreements going on right now. Again, the concept and what it's supposed to stand for, I'm all for. But the way it's executed doesn't make sense. And then finally, look, they have a rule now where if the horse gets claimed, all of your vet records have to turn over for the last 60 days. No problem with that, including surgeries. Well, first of all, if you had a surgery, just like any other athlete, you're probably not competing within 60 days. If this is about horse equine safety and welfare, every time that horse had surgery, the history of his vet records should move from barn to barn.
Absolutely.
So you can properly care for the horse. This is supposed to be about equine safety. This is about equine safety. If this horse had a surgery as a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, or 2 weeks ago, I don't care. I should have that information so that I can properly treat the horse and know what the horse has been treated with along the way over the years. If that's how they want to do it, then that's how they have to go about doing it. And right now, that's not how they're doing it. They only care about 60 days. So I just want some more clarification. And the problem is there have been people appointed on a state-by-state jurisdiction. So there's a safety steward for Hissa, there's a steward for Hissa, and there's a regulatory vet for steward. And every time I've called all of them, their answer is we don't know. So I'm not getting any clarification for the answers that I've asked. And that becomes very, very frustrating because you're sitting there trying to do things the right way and you don't know what the right way is. And that, or like you said, if you have questions, what is the problem with icing my horse the day before the race, the day of the race, where every other athletic field does it? The same thing with the shoes. You know, they talk about the shoes. They said, well, one of our vets has all these studies and everything else. Well, if you Google her, she is in California. She works for UC Davis. And she's been writing these same articles since 1996. So they just went and found the vet that agreed with their ideas. That's not really finding it upon kind of a unanimous basis and talking things out. And that's what my problems are right now. They seem like they have an agenda that they're trying to control. And if it ends horse racing, they don't care. For example, in Texas right now, you can't take their signal because they refuse to play ball with Hissa. And so you can no longer wager on Lone Star Parks races unless you're in the state of Texas.
Wow.
And so their handle is suffering. It's a big step. Everything they do in Texas is bigger in Texas, right? But they're basically telling Hissa to piss off. And it's not going to work for them. And it's not going to work for Hissa. So, again, this is all something that things have to work together. But in horse racing and boxing for years, and these are sports before me and you were even born, Greg. These were the number 1 and 2 sports in America.
True.
Every other sport got a commissioner, got regulatory rules where everything was together. Even here, there's not really a commissioner-based thing. It's just do this or get lost. Even when we're told to sign up, it says, okay, sign up by July 1st or we're not taking your entry. You're scratched. That's not working together. And the only thing we want is for everybody to work together to try and get this done. And look, I'll be the first to admit that horse racing has its share of problems, not just, on the tracks, but the breeding sheds, the
Yeah,
sales,
sure.
from a handicapping standpoint. We saw it in the Breeders' Cup last year where the horse was scratched, won the race, and a lot of people lost money on a horse that they really liked. So there's things that need to change. I'm all for change for the better, but it needs to be well thought out. I wish this thing would just be rolled out over an 18-month window rather than kind of all at front in your face without really working together.
That's sort of the same reasoning, because before we went on the air, you asked me about what did I think about what was going on with the Pac-12 and the Big Ten.
Sure.
And I said, the first thing I said to you, I said, look, the only thing I don't like about it is I don't like this piecemeal way of doing it. I'm not going to like it for the next couple of years because it's going to confuse the hell out of me and it's just not going to seem normal. But maybe 5 years from now, when it's all done, if they would actually put it all together, like within the same season, I would be a lot more happy. But I know it's going to take them 5 or 6 years before we figure this all out. So,
well, the conferences are trying to supersede the NCAA because there's a mistrust in the NCAA. The same thing like in horse racing was a mistrust in the NTRA, who I've been a part of this industry for 20 years and still have no idea what the NTRA does at all. And so
they make money.
What I would equate this to is almost like the NIL, where everybody talked about the NIL forever. The NCAA fought back. Finally, they said, all right, NIL is approved. Well, guess what happened? Texas A&M bought a football team. Okay, Matt Damon bought a zoo. Texas A&M bought a football team. And if you don't believe me, just ask our friend Nick Saban.
Yeah, well, that's going to be good football, no question, when those two match up this winter. The other thing too we can compare it to is what's going on with golf. With this Live Tour, because like you said, it's very, because you can blame the PGA Tour because of its monopoly, and they just want to take they don't want to treat everybody fairly because they don't really, even though they have a commissioner, but it's still. But that's where horse racing, because hey, who's to stop, say, somebody with a lot of money in the horse racing industry, especially if they own their own racetrack, to say, hey, this is the way we're going to do things. Just like you were saying with Texas, this is how we're going to do things. And all of a sudden, everybody in the industry realizing, you know what, I like the way they do it, so I'm going to go to Texas and I'm going to run my horses in Texas, and I ain't going to run them anywhere else. I mean, is that
well? We had this we had the Live Tour 4 years ago, right? The Saudi Cup, with the money that they threw at us with a $20 million purse, is the Live Tour. That's basically what they're doing. Hey, Phil Mickelson, come here where you're going to get crazy amount of money. You don't have to pay anything, blah, blah, blah. That's the Live Tour. That the first kind of trial of the Live Tour was the Saudi Cup. And I remember going there the first year and hearing some of the things on social media and people saying, whatever. And it's gone through every year, and it's gotten a little bit better. It's had its issues along the way. Horses were left there for 3.5 weeks this year. They didn't pay out the winning purse of the first year with maximum security, albeit obviously there's asterisks involved. But nothing is perfect. Nothing in this world is perfect. And the only thing that I say is let it all make sense. Just do things to where it makes sense. And let the greater good prevail. But unfortunately, a lot of times that doesn't happen.
Especially when you get the government involved. So but bottom line too is it's all about money. So who's making money off of this?
Well, it's not the horsemen. I mean, we're being charged in New York, for example. There's a VIG. This is just for the safety costs. They haven't come out with the drug testing, which, by the way, as someone who covers sports on the regular, not just horse racing, but all sports, the cost of drug testing, right? So just the safety initiatives alone is something around the $8 million mark, $8.4 million. We're being assessed in New York alone a $1.6 million fee for safety fee, of which the racetrack's paying $800,000 and we're paying $800,000 as the horse people. Every time you run a horse in Saratoga, Aqueduct, or Belmont, automatically coming out of your purse is a set number, whether it's $90, $70, $50, and it might not sound like a lot, but it adds up. Everything adds up, right? And that's why my big thing was, and I was furious with this, we had 7 races canceled at Aqueduct this winter. That was $1.7 million in purses. They took that purse money and put it in the Saratoga purses, which they didn't need to. Everyone's going to run at Saratoga because it's Saratoga. You didn't need to raise the purses of the races 3,000, 5,000, 6,000. Okay, take that $1.6 million and pay this safety fee, and then you don't have to worry about keep nickel and diming all the little people that aren't going to win a race at Saratoga this summer, because you and I both know the Saratoga races are won by 80% of the races, 85% of the races are won by the top 15% of the trainers. That's a fact, okay? And the little guys and girls, we try and compete, and we do the best we can, but we're up against, the behemoths and the monsters and the drop downs, the $500,000, but, the guy's in town from Europe for a day and wants to win a race, so here, running this race. Yep. Saratoga is the most prestigious meet in America. It's also the most difficult, and they do not work with the horse people here that are here year-round supporting the product to try and make it better. And that's disappointing, but it's a little bit off tangent.
But still.
And we'll talk about that plenty over the summer as we look ahead. We're head there in just 1 week. There are only 3 days of racing left in Belmont before we head to Saratoga.
Yeah, we have just taking a look at our schedule. Again, just at Saratoga, the Whitney will be coming up next month, and that's just as good as any race that we're going to see leading up to the Breeders' Cup. But before we
possibly,
yep, but before we get to what's coming up, again, just want to remind everybody the races that we handicapped on Thursday's show, and again, 2 of the shows were free. 2 of the shows were available on Patreon. 2 of the races, I should say. Race 9 at Belmont, and that wasn't a stakes race, but both John and Chad picked an 11-1 shot to win. Chad hit the exacta and the trifecta. So again, that was a $238 exacta. So what I want to do is put that. I'm going to put that up right now. Here we are. So we're going to see the race here. I don't want to hear it. Wait, what did I just do? Oh, I just did something wrong. Oh, I did one of those things. I'll have to move it back. Hold on a second. There we go. Okay, so here we are, and I know you can't see this, but it's about the midway point of the race. So as soon as I saw the beginning of the race and I saw the 12 out third, and I knew that the favorite, which we talked about, how ridiculous this favorite went off at like 6-5. I had no idea why that horse was such a favorite, but that was a benefit to us handicappers. But once the 12 came out, of course, with the far outside post position in a really good spot, you had to feel pretty good about the way things were going to turn out.
Just moving very comfortably. You watch the race. Jose Lezcano had so much horse throughout the entire running of the race. And these turf races at Belmont, they've been predominantly won on the front end or near the front end. So it was where the horse needed to be, sat in a perfect position. And, really felt very confident throughout watching the race that the horse would perform a big effort. And he ran to it. And, credit to Bruce Levine's horse there running second. We talked about coming off the 21-month layoff. Just a giant race to hold second and, really show the class that she had shown before going to the sidelines.
Yeah, so that kind of, it's always nice when you hit the first one, especially if you have 4 races on the card. So it was like one after another too. So it was real hectic. It wasn't like, all right, the next race is in an hour. It was like one was like every 20 minutes or 10 minutes. So after that big payoff to get us going, now let's take a look at, by the way, that favorite in that race at Belmont was 4-5. All right, so now let's take a look at this one. And this was the race at Churchill. This was this was race 9 at Churchill. And let's see. Let me make sure about this. This was let me get the information here for juggling.
Unfortunately, John's top pick was scratched.
Well, this is the Aloha West win.
Yes.
And
yes.
Aloha West, you hit this exacta with Aloha West. So talk about how this race panned out, because Aloha West was the 4-5 favorite, right? But the exacta obviously wasn't a big payout. But as we talk about, hey, it doesn't matter. It's better to have a winner, even if it's just and as long as you can get a decent payout on the exacta with a favorite, no matter $30, $40, you'll take it.
The one thing you'll see a lot, and this actually went the other way, when we talk about the Princess Rooney, but Jonathan is an unbelievable handicapper, okay? And he's been reading the sheets for his entire life and everything else, and he's great at it. But what they try and do a lot, handicappers and cheap players, they want to beat the favorite because there's no value in it. But really, 4-5 on a horse who won the Breeders' Cup last year, that was getting the ultimate class relief, going from 2 grade ones to an overnight stake. The horse should have been 1-5. And again, like we talked about on the show, Aloha West, it wasn't that he was off form. It was that he was running against arguably 2 of the best horses in the world in his last 2 starts off the layoff with Jackie's Warrior and Flatline. And this race, he was able to kind of show his class and get back to what he's good at. And I look for him to have a very, very solid campaign the rest of the year and possibly be in Breeders' Cup winning or in races throughout the rest of the year. But he just needed to take a step back for a second before taking that step forward. And that's what this race was able to serve its purpose as.
And by the way, the 9, the horse that was at 15-1. So again, yeah, you're going to lose. You're not going to make a lot of money if you want to go win bet on the favorite at 4-5. But the hard part is finding a good exacta partner to make a little money on it. And that's exactly what you were able to do with the 15-1 shot. And that, by the way, that 9 horse, that was a really gutsy second place finish. I mean, that was a real close race. So I forget what the payout was. Do you remember what the payout exacta was on that one?
No.
But it wasn't. I mean, 15-1. It had to be pretty decent. All right. Next up, a few minutes after that came the Princess Rooney, and in the Princess Rooney, this was the one with the 1-9 CC favorite. So it wasn't really again about necessarily trying to, you're not going to beat more than likely CC, but your horse, even though you said, you know what, I think this horse has a chance to win, I'm going to go for the win. Bottom line is your horse finished in second, so it's still, when you have a 1-9 shot and your horse finishes second, that's still a win in my book.
Yeah, I didn't really love the ride from Jockey Lionel Reyes. I thought that the horse was fast enough to make the lead. I still think in hindsight he was fast enough to make the lead. He ended up taking back a little bit and sitting off of Make Mischief, who set the early fractions. And then she did make the lead, and CC had to work a little bit. CC's had a dream trip, great ride from Victor Espinosa to win. Look, at the end of the day, you're talking about Breeders' Cup winning or in races. I don't think anybody behind CC is moving forward to the Breeders' Cup.
Okay.
I thought that race was a solid second place performance from Spirit Wind in second. And look, a lot in front of her. I think she can be a very nice horse, Group 2, Group 3 horse. She's not going to the Breeders' Cup. CC did what she was supposed to do. I'd imagine she goes back to California, possibly back again to Saratoga for the Ballerina, where she'll take on Bella Sofia, which would be a dream matchup. I still have my reservations right now, despite the fact that CC won and did it convincingly and did it the right way. I don't think that CC is the horse to beat in that division, and I'm going to play against her as the year goes on. But look, Mike McCarthy's done a great job. He's had a few of these horses. When he gets their number, they just always seem to fire big races for him. And CC is another example of that. Despite making her third cross-country trip, she was a winner. An easy winner. She got all her fees paid, which, believe me, is a big deal. I can tell you firsthand, when I wrote a check for $150,000 entry for Mind Your Biscuits and we finished 10th and made no money, it hurt. So the winning you're in is great. It's a great concept. I'm really behind it. I love what the Breeders' Cup does with it. And now we know, it's almost like winning a conference tournament in college football. CC is in. So if you're making your bracket, you're making your field for the Filly and Mare Sprint, CC number 1 in that race already.
Okay, so you're saying that we might see CC in the Ballerina?
She was there last year. She ran against a freaking Gamine. Gamine's now been retired, but Bella Sofia is planning on that race. We have a few others pointing for that race. It would shape up to be a really, really good race. But
and who did you say is? Who do you think's the favorite right now, or who do you like in that division?
True.
Right now, it's not. Is there a clear cut in your mind yet?
No, it's kind of wide open. Lady Rocket was an impressive winner over the weekend at Churchill in an undercard race for Brad Cox. She's been a little bit inconsistent. Wesley Ward has filly that has trouble staying sound, but she's fast. Bella Sofia here on the East Coast. there's some interesting horses in this division for sure, and then the 3-year-olds as well. Obviously, Brad Cox had a really nice 3-year-old filly in Mataraya that won the Acorn over here, and she'll be seen in the test next. So,
Okay.
and I mean, look, you don't know what to make of Echo Zulu. It seems like all the results came back negative on her, so hopefully we'll see her at Saratoga as well. So it's a deep division right now. There's no clear-cut favorite at all, but I don't think CC is that horse right now in the Breeders' Cup.
And by the way, you will be handicapping that show late. It's the last Thursday of August when we preview the Ballerina and the Sword Dancer from Saratoga. So that is one of your scheduled.
Travers. And the Travers.
Well, the Travers is when is the Travers? Is it the same weekend?
Same day. Yeah, same day.
Okay.
By the way, the Travers right now
very cool.
is shaping up as people aren't paying attention to this yet, which nobody ever does. And we lost Mo Donegal over the weekend to bone bruising. He's out for the rest of the year. But the Travers is shaping up right now that there's more horses that are pointing for it than will qualify to get in. It's not a 20-horse field. It's a 14-horse field. And right now, I have a list of 17 or 18 horses pointing for that race. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next 6 weeks.
Is that because everything that I was putting, all the notes I put into all the races that we're handicapping are just the Breeders' Cup Challenge Series races? So
yeah, for some reason, I don't understand this. I'd love to get Dora Delgado from the Breeders' Cup on the show sometime. Why the Haskell is a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup, and the Travers is not.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand they wanted to reward Monmouth Park, and they have so many races in Saratoga like the Whitney, but I would think that the Travers should be a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah. And is that like the only really big race, stakes race that's going to take place over the next few months that is not a Breeders' Cup Challenge Series race?
No, there's a decent amount of them along the way.
Big one. I mean, Travers is as big as it gets, right?
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of races that kind of make you say,
Okay.
But that's the way it goes.
All right. Well, that's awesome. That's a bonus. So right there, we have 3 big ones on that show. So you can be sure that we're going to have some fun on that one. And then the last race from Saturday's card was the Stephen Foster. Now, this is when John gets to pump his chest out a little bit, picking Olympiad in that one over Mandaloon. And so he beat you on that one. And John also hits the exacta in this one. So what did you think about the win by Olympiad in the Stephen Foster?
Very impressive. I mean, this is an undefeated horse for the year. This race speaks volumes to the ownership, allowing Hall of Fame trainer Bill Mott to take his time. And when you're able to take your time and produce one, we started doing this show on a weekly basis, Greg, talking about the Derby. Everybody wants to talk about the Derby. We had our top 10 list for the Derby. And what happens is so many times owners are so overzealous with trying to make the Derby that there's nothing left of the horse after the Derby. And so a lot of times, and this year has been an exception, by the way. I think there's been about 5 or 6 winners already from the Derby, maybe even more, with a bunch of seconds and thirds like Epicenter along the way. But Charge It and Cyberknife and so many of those horses came back. And Mo Donegal, so many of those horses have come back and won big races since even the Ohio Derby the other day was won by Tawny Port, and White Bavaria was second. So, but normally the Derby comes and you won't see another winner from that race after the Triple Crown season. They're done. Yeah. And Olympiad didn't make the Derby, and they took their time and they babied him long and had little issues along the way, and they're being rewarded with an unbelievable campaign. He set the track record at Fairgrounds earlier this year. He almost set the track record at Churchill, which nobody's talking about, the other day, which is really impressive. Great ride from Junior Alvarado. Sat the perfect trip.
But wasn't it? I mean, we talked about how the fast pace killed the Derby, but there was a seriously fast pace in the Stephen Foster, and it didn't affect Olympiad at all. You really thought for a second American Revolution was in a perfect spot.
There's a difference between a 7-horse field and a 20-horse field. There's a difference between a mile and a quarter and a mile and an eighth, and there's a difference between older horses and 3-year-olds. So that plays a lot into it. But the one thing I'd say is Olympiad showed the class that he has. Good effort for American Revolution. We talked about it on the show on Thursday. We thought he was going to run an improved race from the race before, and he did, and he moves on. And I think he'll be one of the favorites with Olympiad if they were to square off in the Whitney. I'm going to go on record now and say I don't think Life is Good will run in the Whitney. This is a very hot take. Everybody's already putting what Life is Good in the winner's circle and squaring him off against Flightline in the Breeders' Cup Classic. I don't think Life is Good will run in the Whitney. That's just my guess right now. I think Todd Pletcher will be represented in the race by American Revolution. And the disappointment in this has to be Mandaloon. I thought he's had a good trip, looked like a winner kind of going into the turn, and just kind of flattened out. And, he runs one pace. He's done this before. He was a disappointment in the Louisiana Derby and came back and ran a really good race in the Kentucky Derby, but didn't want to go by Medina Spirit. Automax or not, he didn't want to go by. He kind of was one pace in the Derby. He's been one pace for many of his races. When he won at Fairgrounds, the prep for Saudi Arabia, he beat another one pace horse in Midnight Bourbon. So it wasn't so much that he won the races. Maybe neither of them wanted to win and somebody had to. He's a horse, in my opinion. And look, Brad Cox is back-to-back Eclipse Award winner. I'm never going to tell Brad Cox what to do. But in this situation on this podcast, I will. Run the horse on the grass. It'll never happen. It'll never happen. He looks like a grass horse. He acts like a grass horse. He's running in his races now like a grass horse. He's the Kentucky Derby winner. I'm sure he will continue on and run in the Breeders' Cup Classic and go stand stud. But I would love to see this horse try the grass one time the way he runs.
All right. Nice segue. Speaking of grass, let's talk about the Queen Anne Stakes. Now, these were some races that took place at Royal Ascot a few weeks ago. We promised that because Chad wasn't going to be around on this show at this time of the week for a few weeks, but we would get back to it, and here it is. We start with, out of the 3 races, we're going to first talk about this Queen Anne Stakes and the win. Now, how do you pronounce the horse's name? Bayed. Okay, so Bayed. And it's just so interesting watching the races here, because it's the exact opposite point of view as far as the television screen. So you're looking at it, and how does this track? Because it doesn't seem to be a lot of turns at all. It just seems to be a lot of just a lot of straightforward racing.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's a unique configuration. They don't have a lot of. You can't even train over it. Okay, you cannot train over it like you do in America. You ship over and run on it. It's only used, during that small window. And then there's another meet later on in the year. This was the first race on the first day at Royal Ascot.
Wow.
And it was a treat to see the horse who right now, according to the Longines time form, is ranked and rated as the #1 horse in the world. He has never lost. He's never been defeated. Will we see him in the Breeders' Cup turf? That is to be determined. This was a win and you're in for that race. He has all fees paid. Trainer William Haggis is a wonderful trainer. And I think it'll be under the radar. I think the Arc de Triomphe in France would be the preferred race. And then maybe they'd look at this, at Keeneland, the Breeders' Cup turf afterwards. Sheikh Hamdan Al Maktoum, who is Sheikh Mohammed's brother, the patriarch of the Shadwell family for forever. That's who Kieran McLaughlin went to Dubai for and trained for all those years. Was an unbelievable horseman, an unbelievable sportsman. He passed away last year, right before the Dubai World Cup, and his presence has been severely missed. The Shadwell Silks, which we saw so predominantly here in America, along with around the world, they have many, many less horses now. They are represented by Malafat in America in the filly division. Sheikha Hissa, his daughter, is actually now running the establishment. And this horse would be right up there with about as good as any horse they ever owned. And they've had, walls and walls of plaques and trophies and races they've won. They won the Breeders' Cup Classic with Invasor back at Churchill Downs. They love competing at the biggest stage. Bayed might be as good as anyone. And his turn of foot, if you watch the race, they end up kind of splitting. And in Europe, it's kind of funny you talk about when you watch the race. it's not run like an American race, right? Where everybody's trying to save ground and everything else. They basically split up into two groups. It looked like they were playing freeze tag, and Baed's right behind Sheikh Mohammed's horse, and he's just sitting, waiting. And as soon as Shane Cross, the jockey, asks him to pick it up, he just accelerates and blows by the other horse like he's standing still. And that's a really nice horse. And just, I mean, as easy a 2-length winner as you're ever going to find. He's done nothing wrong in his career. And I really hope that we get to see him in America, because it would be a treat to see him take on America's best. But right now, no doubt about it, he is the world's best for sure right now.
And so are any of these horses, because again, the reason we wanted to talk about this was because Breeders' Cup Challenge Series races, are they going to come to America? Are we going to get to see this horse?
I'm hopeful. I mean, they haven't made any comment one way or the other right now.
Okay.
But look, whether they run in the Breeders' Cup Mile or they try and stretch them out to the Breeders' Cup Turf, it would be an absolute treat to see this horse run. And I'm not ruling it out at this stage. So hopefully we see Baed over here in Kentucky.
All right, now let's take a look at State of Rest and the Prince of Wales. So what's the deal with State of Rest?
So this is really kind of a remarkable story. This horse actually ran at Saratoga last year, and he came in for Joseph O'Brien, who's Aidan O'Brien's son, and has kind of quickly carved out a notch of being an unbelievable trainer in his own right at such a young age. I don't even know if he's 30 years old yet. Barely, if he is, he's barely 30. I think he's still trying to grow facial hair for the first time. And he came here, and I kind of just thought the horse was here because he wanted an excuse to go to the sale, because it was the same week as the yearling sale, the very predominant yearling sale. All the big owners are there. He's a young guy trying to hustle more owners and stuff like that. I didn't give the horse much of a shot in Saratoga. He won and paid a nice price. He then went to Australia, which is, what most horses do from Saratoga. They go to Australia. And he ran in the world-famous Cox Plate, and he won that, which is almost unheard of, especially for a 3-year-old, although 3-year-olds have had a lot of success in that race lately because they get a weight break. Then he comes back and runs in Royal Ascot. He's won 3 Group 1s now on 3 different continents. Okay? It's very seldomly seen. He went gate to wire in this race. It was he beat a very, very deep field. They tried to run to him late. He set very reasonable fractions. They didn't go very fast, but he did what he had to do. And when they set down to run, they couldn't catch him. Joseph O'Brien is very much like his father. He runs in big races in America. He's actually himself competed in Breeders' Cup as a jockey and run horses here before. It would not surprise me one bit to see State of Rest come over here for the Breeders' Cup. And
sounds like it.
That would add a lot of intrigue to our Breeders' Cup.
Hey, make it 4 continents, and we'll have something. Okay, now the last one is the Norfolk, and you got to love the name of this horse. It's the Riddler, and the Riddler, and this is just funny because you just see it's just a huge field of just beautiful grass, and just let him go.
Look, I like supporting international races. I'm sorry, this race should not be a Breeders' Cup win in your in race. Okay, they're 2-year-olds. Okay, it's June. They've all run 1 time, maybe 2 times. Some of them not at all. This horse, by the way, the fact that his name is the Riddler, this race is a joke because he's in like the 15 path and ends up in the 3 path, taking out 2 or 3 horses along the way.
I was going to ask you about that.
I mean,
after what happened to me last week, yes.
How this get disqualified, I have no idea. Look, he's running late. Okay, so this race was only 5 furlongs. The Breeders' Cup, the race that he qualifies is the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, which is going to be a little bit longer. It's a mile, I believe, a mile or a mile and 16. But at least he was running late. The takeaway is these horses that win this race always seem to come here for the Breeders' Cup. They never seem to win. But we do have to mention it because they enjoy the free trip and the free travel. It's winning you're in, and you don't know what's going to happen. But this horse, he needs to maintain a straight line because I don't think American stewards will not disqualify him the way the European stewards did not, because I mean he was playing dominoes.
Yeah. I was watching. I'm going, how is this even allowed? I mean, I get the horse gets hit in the head with a whip, and I lose a couple $100, and his horse is just cutting everybody off. Like, okay, just don't hit him with a whip in the head though. So
yeah, exactly.
Like you said, I guess it's a free for all over there, right? They don't care. Whoever wins wins.
Well, they suspended Irad Ortiz 5 days, and it cost him a lot of money because he couldn't ride Life is Good and Charge it last Saturday.
Oh, that's nice. What did they suspend him for?
They said he crowded horse earlier the day before when it wasn't even as egregious as this was.
Okay. Coming up, let's see, July. So I'm taking a look at our schedule here. So we are back next week, and next week we're gonna go to one of our top 10 lists. It's gonna be best rivalries of all time. So you can choose horses, trainers, and owners. So we're gonna have a top 10 list. What's that?
What about sports commentators? I'd like to have a rivalry with Andy Sterling.
Of horse racing commentators. Okay.
Well, I'd like to take Sterling in a rivalry. Does that count?
Who?
Andy Sterling from Naira.
I've never heard of him.
Yeah.
That's a inside horse racing experts joke.
No, he's on Fox Sports. So I used to be on it with him.
But then after that, you're off again because you're going to be with us for the Haskell. And a few other races, of course, but the Haskell will be the big one coming up on the 21st, but that's still a couple of weeks away. So next week, John, we will be back, and like I said, we'll have that top 10 list. We had a jam-packed show today, and again, want to thank you and John for a terrific last Thursday of picks, winning picks. I'm not sure you guys can do any better than that. I mean, even the race you lost, you actually won.
It makes up for my not liking Rich Strike, which I'm still not going to like Rich Strike in the Travers. I'll tell you right now. I will not be picking Rich Strike in the Travers.
I think Rich Strike's odds are going to go up quite a bit by the time we get to the Travers after what happened last time out.
That's right where he wants him.
Yeah, well, hey, that's right where we want him too. Keep the odds up. Helps out the other horses and makes our paycheck a little bit easier at the window. Appreciate it as always, Chad. And again, we'll talk to you next Monday.
You got it. Happy 4th.